All right, howdy ho there, everybody. We just finished up creating our levels and grids, and we're on to move to the next step now. Uh, what we need to do is we're going to place some of our walls that will define our building. And sorry about the noise in the background. I got to get to the right page in my own little reference material here. All right. First thing, like I said, the first thing that we need to do, well, after we get our grids and everything created, so we're at that point. Let me scroll back up here. I'm in my ground floor view. We need to create some walls, but the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to modify walls to become the wall types we actually need. So I'm going to come here to my wall tool, and I'm going to select from my list exterior brick on metal stud. Now, we're not actually going to use this as our wall type. We're going to create a new wall type using this as our starting point. Because we're not going to use metal framing in this project, we're going to use wood framing, so that we need to change a couple things around. So I'm going to click Edit Type, and here in Structure, I'm going to click Edit. Whoop, I mean, back up. I'm going to click Cancel. The very first thing I forgot to do. I don't actually want to modify this brick on metal stud. I want to keep it in the project, but I want to duplicate it. I need to make a copy of this, and it's the copy that I'm going to modify. So I'll click Duplicate, and the first thing that Revit tries to do is be helpful. Exterior brick on metal stud number 2, but that's not what I want. So I'm going to back up, get rid of the 2, and the metal I'm going to change to wood. So this is going to be exterior brick on wood stud. This is the brand new wall style that we're going to begin modeling with. But what we need to do is we need to change the wall definition so it matches wood framing instead of metal framing. So now we click on Structure. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this thermal air layer, item number 2. Air layers, I've never seen them actually constructed being 3 inches thick. I see them usually between 1.5 inches and 2 inches. So I'm going to change this to 2 inches. And you'll notice I just typed in 0 space 2. Revit will infer this as being 2 inches. So I don't have to type 0 feet 2 inches. I can 0 space 2 and then I'm done. And we're not using a metal stud layer. We're going to use wood framing. So you see I've highlighted the material here in row number 6. And here's this little dot, dot, dot that allow me to bring up my material editor. And just because I don't know exactly where it's going to hit, up here in the search field, I'm going to type wood, and it's going to filter everything out. And even though wood framing is actually it's a lumber, it's a soft wood, I'm going to use structure, wood joist, and rafter layer. It's a little bit different. It just has to do with what part of the structure is being used, and since the handout that I've got posted actually uses this particular definition, this is the one that we're going to go with. So structure, wood joist, and rafter layer, I will click OK. And wood framing is not, a 2x6 is not actually 6 inches, it's 5.5. So 0, 5, there was a space there. I put in another space, 1/2. That's 5.5 inches. I push return. You can see Revit automatically understands what's going on there. So that part's done. I will click OK. I've modified brick on wood stud. I'll click OK. And my height for these walls are going to be to the high roof. And my location wall, location line. This is the point where my wall is going to be defined on. I'm going to click this. I'm going to use the core face exterior. I'm actually drawing using the outside edge of framing. That's going to be the imaginary line that I'm creating as I'm actually drawing these walls. So I'll click here. And now I'm going to zoom in. And it should be, yes, it's going to be this intersection of grid line D and grid line 3. So this is where I'm going to begin. So just one left click, and I'm going to move my mouse over here until I intersect with grid line 1. Left click once, I'm going to come up to grid line C, click, go over to grid line 2. So think of it, it's like playing Battleship. Left click, we're going to go, did I get that right? No, I didn't. And, oh well, I'll fix it in a minute. We're going to go up to grid line A, and we're going to come across until we hit grid line 4. Okay, and then we're going to click Escape. I'm going to click it twice because I actually need to fix this wall. This wall was not supposed to be at grid line C, it's supposed to be at grid line B. So I'm going to highlight this wall, I'm going to use my move tool, and I'm going to move it from grid line C to grid line B. And you'll notice all my wall intersections automatically clean up. It's one of the things we all love about Revit. Now, if, I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see this, if you're not seeing the wall materials, it means our view detail or our detail level is not set correctly. If all you're seeing are two lines like that, then down here at the bottom of the screen, set your detail level to this view for medium, so you'll be able to see all those pieces. All right, I'm going to draw another wall. We're going to use the same wall style, and I'm going to start. Yeah, we'll just say it's 5 feet off of grid line 5 and the intersection of B. So this is where I'm going to start. And I'm going to come over, let's say 12 feet. I don't know if that's exactly right. We'll fine tune it in a minute. Come down to grid C, across to grid line 6, down to D, back left to 5, down to E, left to 4, and then down to F. And then we're done with this particular wall type and creating these walls. I'll click escape twice. Okay. Now I want to make sure that this wall is in the proper spot. This wall, make sure I get this right. Yes. The line of framing, that inside line right there, is supposed to be 5'6" off of that grid line. So how am I going to verify that? I can go to my Annotate tab, and I will click on Detail Line. Now a detail line, all I'm doing is I'm drawing a reference line. So this is, number one, it's temporary use, but a detail line is only visible in this view. There's another type of line, it's called a model line, that's actually visible in 3D space. The only reason that I go to the detail line is just basically because I'm used to it. And I'm going to start my line, I'm just going to start it on this grid line. Okay, you can see that helper dimension is trying to provide me with information. All I want to make sure is that you can see that that faint little purple X right here as I move my mouse around. That just makes sure that the line is going to start on that grid. So click and drag off to the right, and I can actually type in, just like AutoCAD, 5'6", dragging in the direction I want to go. I type in the distance that I want to go, and I push return. And then I'm going to draw a line straight down. Click escape on my keyboard twice. Now, if I zoom in a little bit more, just to make sure I'm right here. Some of you guys are kind of getting lost. I want to make sure that we're right here on the plan. We'll zoom in again. I want to line up, you see the outside face of framing, that my mouse cursor is directly underneath? That's what I want to line up with this line. So I'm going to use my Align tool, which is over here on my Modify tab. And I'll use my Align tool. And the first object I select is the item that I'm going to align to. Not what I want to move, but what I want to align to. So I hover over this. This is the item I actually want to align to, so I'll left click. Now you'll notice as I move my mouse over the wall, the exterior face highlights. It's hard to see, but as I zoom in, it's actually the wall center line that's being highlighted there. You might not be able to see it real great on the screen, but it's that little green dashed line immediately to the right of the outside face of framing. And if I move my mouse over to the outside face, the exterior face of the wall, then that highlights. Well, I want that line that's the outside face of framing, but what's being highlighted is the center line of the wall. So all I'm going to do is I hover my mouse right here, and I'm going to press Tab on the keyboard. I'm going to press and release it just once. Now you can see that outside face of framing has become highlighted. Now I left click, and that's how that wall gets moved into place. I'll click escape twice to exit out of the command, go back to modify. I can then select these two lines and delete them from the project because I don't need them anymore. Okay. The other thing that I need to do is I'm going to highlight these, or select rather, these walls, because I need to change the wall type, the wall construction for all of this. So I'm going to come back over here to edit type. I'm going to make another copy. Instead of brick exterior, I want metal panel on the outside. So just as I did the first time, I'm going to click duplicate, or what I should have done to start off, and I'll click duplicate. And this is not brick on wood stud 2, so I'll delete the 2, and I'll change brick to metal panel on wood stud. and then come in here and click on structure because I want to change the components that make up this wall. Everything else on the inside here stays the same. I'm only going to change these two items, item number 1 and item number 2. What I do with item number 2 is when I highlight, you can see this is where my mouse is, and I'm actually clicking on the number 2. Then I come down here and click delete. There is technically no airspace that Revit would recognize as such in this type of wall system. So I'll click delete, and you notice everything here moves up to fill the gap. I'm going to highlight my number 1 item, which is not common brick. I'm going to change this. Click on my little dot, 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 and scroll up just a little bit so I can see aluminum. I'll click aluminum and click OK. And I'm going to change the thickness of this to 3/4 of an inch. So this is my metal panel wall system that I've got. There we go. Now I'm going to zoom in, and you notice here's my brick, here's my metal panel, and you'll notice that my face of framing and my grid line is still in alignment. That is why when we actually drew our lines and it said location line, it's that location line we were drawing off of. That way when we can change the definition of the wall, it's that location line that everything changes around. Okay, so I've deselected everything. I do need to make a couple of additional changes. I'm going to highlight just these walls this time. So it's the same walls that we had last time, except these last 2 right here. So these 5 wall sections I've highlighted. I'm going to come over here into my properties window. I'm coming down to top constraint. This is not high roof. This is the low roof. Okay. So far so good. Everyone keeping up? Great. Onward. Oh, I'll come back to that here in a second. The next thing I'm going to do is I need to close off this piece right here. So back to my wall tool. Click on my wall type and scroll down in the list until I reach storefront. Now my height, we're not going to the high roof, we're going to go to the low roof. Everything else remains the same. And I'm going to start here at this end of the wall. And you'll notice, I'm going to zoom out so you can see where I'm at. So I'm grid line F, the bottom of the intersection of grid F and grid 4. And I'm going to start on the inside corner of that wall. One left click, come across until I intersect with the next grid line, that's to the left. Left click, and then come up until I run into the brick wall. Left click, I'm done. I'll click escape twice. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to get the edges of this to line up. I don't want my brick storefront sitting quite like that. I want to move the end of the wall so it is in a line with the inside edge of the curtain wall. So once again, I will click on Modify and come over to Align. Click the Align tool. Remember, the first item that I select is what I'm aligning to, so that is the inside edge of my curtain wall. The second item that I click is the object that I'm moving in the command, which is this edge of the wall, and left click. Now you can see these things line up nice and pretty. And I'm basically going to do the same thing down here. Left click on the, except this time I'm clicking on the outside edge of the wall, click on the outside edge of this wall, and come by and just extend that down just a hair like that. So there we go. That part is done. And we got a little bit going on right through here. We're going to create some more drafting lines just for temporary measures. Back to our Annotate tab. Come to Detailed Line. And instead of just manually drawing these lines, I'm going to select objects. I'm going to pick objects. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my offset to 2 feet. And I'm going to hold my mouse over grid line 4 so that the offset edge is to the right, not to the left. All I have to do is move my mouse a little bit to make that change. I haven't left clicked yet. So when I make sure that that dashed blue line shows up, that this is the side I want to offset to, left click once. I'm going to change my offset again, 2'8", and I'm going to select that line I just created. You guys might want to, if you need to review that, you can review that. It's totally cool. I'm going to change my offset one more time, be 1'6". I'm going to select grid line A and create a new line 18 inches above grid line A. and another line 18 inches below grid line C. So there we go. We should have that. All right. Whoops, wrong button. And click Escape twice or hit the Modify tool. Either way works. Back to my Architecture tab. Create a new wall. Click on my wall types, as I don't want to create storefront this time. I actually want to create generic 8-inch masonry. And then I'm going to start. I'm starting in the upper left hand corner. It's just because that's how I work most of the time. And I'm going to create my wall. Oops, I forgot something. Click cancel. My location wall, or my location line for my wall, is finish face exterior. And my top constraint is not the low roof, it is the chimney. Okay? As you can imagine, we're creating, this is a line for our fireplace on our chimney. So I'm going to start at this upper left-hand corner, go across to that line, go down, and just complete that rectangle. There we go. That's what those last lines that I wanted to create. Now I can highlight all these objects. Quick little note on that. You notice that I use that same crossing window that we can use in AutoCAD. It doesn't. The only downside is it doesn't highlight blue or green depending on which way you go. So I can use my crossing window this way, or I can select one. If I want to select additional items just by clicking on it, I'll hold down my Control key. Now you see that little plus sign that shows up right over by my cursor? So that's what the Control key does, is it allows you to add things. So I'll left click, and this is how I add objects to my selection set. If I want to select remove items from my selection set, I'll hold the Shift key. You notice how that turns into a minus sign. So hold the Control key, let go of the Control key, hold the Shift key, let go of the Shift key. If I want to toggle back and forth, I can hold the Control and Shift key, and you can see I have a little plus minus there right next to my cursor. So I can highlight any item, or I can deselect any item. So I'm just leaving my both Control and Shift key selected right now. It would be neat if the command, I don't know, it would be neat if you had the opportunity to turn this on all the time. But I kind of like having the ability to pick what key that I'm actually holding on the keyboard to make that change. Now that I've got all these selected, I'll just come up and delete them. And I'm going to extend these walls into the face of the brick. So back to my Modify tab. Click on Trim Extend to Single Element. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Just like the Align tool, the first thing that we select is the object that we're extending to. So click on this edge of the wall, because that's what we're extending to, and we're going to extend this wall into the other one. And repeat on the other side. So those are the basic walls. There you go. All right. Next thing down is we're going to be creating some floor slabs, or a floor slab, and we're going to create the second floor, and we'll see you guys in a bit.